Hello everyone. In this video I will discuss one of the films called Roadkill, and never forget that I always pray for you and your family to be happy and healthy always. As the film begins, we are directed to a child feeding his dog from the refrigerator, where he quietly does so without his parents' knowledge, causing chaos around the house. That same night, the mother eventually discovers this, and the child is scolded and reprimanded relentlessly, leading to continued trauma until the morning. After sleeping all night in the dog's kennel, the child is startled by one thing: the fact that his dog has just been killed by his own mother. Then we see a man waking up. This young man, named Kevin, lives on the streets with only a few belongings. On the other hand, we are also introduced to a woman named Sarah, who always lives alone and moves around with her favorite car, much like Kevin. Sarah, like Kevin, has no permanent residence. Here, Kevin hopes someone will help him, and shortly after, he focuses on a house where a family appears happy. At the same time, Sarah is passing through the street where Kevin is walking, and from this coincidence, Sarah deliberately stops to observe Kevin and immediately offers him a ride. After getting in, Kevin is asked one question by Sarah: whether Kevin is a maniac. Still in the same area, two kids have just finished hunting as usual, but today something unusual happens. There's a blue car parked, and they immediately panic in fear. In the car, Sarah tells Kevin that she's heading to an area called Abbeyfield. Surprisingly, Sarah ends up taking a road that is clearly 5 times farther than the normal route. This leads her to have to fill up with gas and stop briefly in a remote area. Sarah enters the store where she meets the old man, the storekeeper. While behind the store, Kevin accidentally sees the old man's granddaughter fixing a car. Shortly after, the local sheriff, who is on his usual daily patrol, arrives and notices Kevin, reprimanding him for leaving the gas pump unattended while refueling. From there, the sheriff starts to remember Kevin's face, while Sarah remains silent inside, avoiding meeting the sheriff. Kevin finishes filling the tank while the sheriff finishes his task due to receiving a call. After the sheriff leaves, Sarah emerges to get into the car. During his journey, the sheriff receives a call about a body found in a field. At the same time, Sarah suddenly swerves the steering wheel, causing her car to veer into a ditch, which she has a reason for. Sarah intentionally swerved to avoid hitting a small turtle crossing the road. On the other hand, the sheriff has arrived at the scene of the body discovery. Not only one, but 2 bodies are found here, a man and a woman inside the car. The doctor estimates that they had died approximately 24 hours ago. Shortly after, Sheriff Jr. is called to the scene, but he doesn't immediately leave because he notices a car in need of assistance. Surprisingly, the same murder case has occurred 15 times in the last 15 days, and the doctor is overwhelmed due to the lack of personnel for autopsies. In a different situation, it's Sarah's car that catches Sheriff Jr.'s attention. Kevin explains that it's because of a turtle in the middle of the road. Sheriff Jr. assists them in pulling Sarah's car, and after it's done, he asks where she's headed. Sarah responds that she's going to Buxton, which Kevin notices is different from her initial answer of going to Abbeyfield. Kevin is confused about why Sarah lied, but Sarah remains indifferent and is instead interested in a nearby restaurant, deciding to grab a quick bite there. At the same time, Sheriff Jr. receives a call to go to the gas station, the same one previously visited by Sarah and Kevin. He is shocked to discover that a murder has just occurred there. At the restaurant, Sarah and Kevin are enjoying their freshly arrived food. Kevin is informed that he's the first stranger Sarah has ever given a ride to. While Sarah and Kevin are relaxing, the sheriff is confronted with the reality of the increasing murder cases, and this is where he becomes suspicious of a red car previously driven by a man. Sheriff Jr. is shocked when he realizes he just helped the red car, and he mentions that there were 2 people inside, a man and a woman. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, a chef keeps a constant watch on Sarah, which Sarah notices, prompting her to approach him to find out what he wants. At the same time, a waiter is busy watching TV, unaware that she's irritating a customer, something she never imagined. Seeing Sarah not returning promptly, Kevin becomes interested and reveals that he's brought a sharp weapon and is ready to execute the waiter. On another front, Sarah has just killed the chef, leaving him wet and bloody. She quickly leaves, causing Kevin to cancel his plan to execute the waiter. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the sheriff returns to the gas station, completely stunned because the murder pattern is strikingly similar, with slash wounds on the neck. It's unclear who's behind it, but the execution style is exactly the same. Then Sheriff Jr. passed by a place that turned out to be a restaurant where Sarah and Kevin had previously been. It didn't take long for him to spot Sarah's car. Automatically, he turned on the sirens, and Sarah, along with Kevin, was immediately followed from behind. However, Sarah didn't stop and instead increased her speed. This made Sheriff Jr. even more suspicious because they were trying to escape. Amazingly, Sarah managed to escape Sheriff Jr.'s pursuit. Meanwhile, the sheriff couldn't do much because he was still trying to catch up, but according to the information he received, it was the woman driving the car. On the other hand, time was getting darker, and the restaurant server became confused because the chef had disappeared, and later the server was shocked to find the chef dead in the bathroom. It was already dark when Sarah told Kevin that she would keep running because she didn't have a driver's license. Kevin believed her, and reluctantly, as they continued their journey, they had to pass by a police car that was on guard. But suddenly, Sarah's car started to swerve, revealing that there was a problem with the driver's seat, and it was Kevin who had initially remained silent, but was now pointing a weapon at Sarah. From this point, it was revealed that Sarah was not an ordinary girl. She had grown up in a situation where she was abused and raped by her own father. Initially, there was indeed ignorance between Kevin and Sarah. Sarah didn't know that she was giving a ride to a robber, and Kevin himself didn't know that he was being given a ride by a murderer. Interestingly, during this ignorance, they acted without realizing each other's actions. Sarah focused on seeking revenge against men, while Kevin focused on women due to his resentment towards his mother. However, in the end, Kevin became aware first because he suspected Sarah was lying about their destination and continuously running from the police. This is where Sarah immediately fought back, as she knew from experience how to deal with men. Shortly after, Sarah realized a car approaching, which turned out to be the sheriff's car. In this situation, Sarah couldn't do anything but pretend. She immediately acted as if she was a victim being abducted by Kevin. Kevin, on the other hand, couldn't do anything because the sheriff had already been suspicious of him from the beginning. In this opportunity, Sarah was actually interested in killing the sheriff so she could confront Kevin, but her intention came too late as another car arrived shortly after, which was Sheriff Jr.'s car that had been following Sarah. Kevin was immediately taken to each crime scene to be questioned about his actions, while Sarah was taken to the police station for custody and interrogation. After arriving at the police station, there was no one else inside. In the sheriff's office, there were only Sheriff Jr. and Sarah, where suddenly Sarah's pants were torn to treat her wounds. Initially, her intention was positive, but Sheriff Jr. was tempted by Sarah. He was confused why Sarah didn't act this way from the beginning. Pretending to interrogate her, Sheriff Jr. became increasingly aggressive and forced Sarah. Briefly, the scene showed Sarah's past memories, when her father and all her relatives would use her for free. That memory truly caused an unforgettable and tremendous trauma. Meanwhile, the sheriff had just returned from the crime scene, and that was when Sarah managed to kill Sheriff Jr. However, Sarah was still not satisfied as she had a few more tasks to accomplish. At the same time, Kevin had just realized that Sarah was becoming more dangerous. Unfortunately, this was not realized by Sheriff Jr. and Sheriff Sr. After shooting the sheriff, Sarah fell silent. Kevin accidentally overheard that Sarah allowed herself to be used by the sheriff. Strangely, the sheriff continued to be forced, and this dangerous change in emotions made Kevin no longer remain silent. Kevin knew that Sarah was extremely dangerous, and her trauma was far worse than what Kevin had experienced. In fact, Kevin had to face another fact that made him even more convinced and understand how dangerous Sarah was. The family he had seen before getting a ride from Sarah had also been killed. After escaping from the police, it was revealed that Sarah had given a cigarette to Kevin, which turned out to be laced with a tranquilizer. It was at that moment that Sarah immediately turned back to execute the family. Clearly, Kevin had to escape and avoid the situation. He could no longer hope for Sarah to change because she was becoming more brutal as time went on. After successfully escaping, Kevin continued to accelerate while Sarah drove the sheriff's car. Unfortunately, due to the gunshot, the red car Kevin was driving suffered a puncture near the tank. Here, Kevin managed to graze Sarah's car, causing her to lose control. However, this moment did not create a significant distance between them. After running out of fuel and stopping by the roadside with such a close distance between them, Kevin took advantage of the situation. Meanwhile, Sarah was unaware that Kevin had already disposed of the family's bodies. This led to her getting injured in the car explosion. Sarah, thrown from her weapon, gave Kevin the courage to fight back. However, relying on Sarah's trauma, Kevin soon realized that she was not an ordinary girl. In the fight, both of them sustained injuries. Sarah had a severe wound in her abdomen, while Kevin was in a much worse condition. The noose around his neck caused him intense and relentless suffering. Within a short period of 3 months, news spread that Kevin had died, while one girl managed to escape. Unfortunately, the police have not been able to find Sarah until now, and the movie concludes. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.